in the Zeiss look. The sharpness, edge to edge, is unparalleled. There is what we call true color. And what I mean by that is there are lenses that will impart a color, either something a little more blue or a little more yellow. And that can be on purpose. It can also be some older lenses tend to age that way. Our lenses, because of the coatings we talked about, stay very true to color. It's very neutral. What you see is what you're going to get delivered to the sensor. And then lastly is the contrast nature of the lens. Our lenses tend to be very contrasty. It's kind of become what's called the Zeiss pop. Zeiss is a company that's been around for quite some time, since about 1820, always making optical instruments. Started with microscopes back in the day. Carl Zeiss went to Jena, Germany, found a better way to make it with more process and more control. His friend Ernst Abbe came around and said, listen, let's put some engineering concepts behind this. And the third gentleman was Otto Schott, who came in and said, let's make good glass. And those three gentlemen brought forward what is Carl Zeiss AG, Carl Zeiss Incorporated today. We're in medical instruments, eyeglasses, as well as photo and cinema lenses.
Well, let's focus photo and cinema because that's the market in which we're in today. One of the things that I think is critical for a lens is the glass.
Correct.
Without good glass, you don't have a good lens. How does Zeiss manufacture its glass?
So a majority of the best glass is coming out of Japan. The best grinders are there. And we work with them as well as a couple of other glass grinders, and I use that term very loosely because grinding is not actually what they do, but to design the different styles of lenses that are put into a housing to make up a photography or a cinematography lens like you know it today. So all of those technologies are very carefully controlled, and Zeiss tends to be very particular and very exacting in the designs that we build, and those are manufactured to our specifications.
Why are there so many elements in a lens? Don't you just need like one or two when you're done?
You would think everybody, when you hold up a lens, you feel the pirate in you come out. There's a lens in the front, there's a lens in the back, and we kind of bring that into focus. The reality is the way that we need to control the light from when it enters the lens housing to when it hits the film plane or the digital sensor, that has to be controlled, and it is a function almost like a jet engine. You're squeezing the light and relaxing, squeezing and relaxing through the different elements. So as you bend it, it comes down to a focal point that we can adjust the focus and then opens up again to give you the coverage of the sensor, whatever that may be.
Another element of a lens is the coating. Why are we coating the lenses?
Glass in and of itself is not clean. It may look nice, but the particulate matter in glass, in any glass, tends to diffract the light coming through it and send it multiple different ways. And we find that if we coat it with specific styles of single and multiple layers of coating, we can increase the penetration, the delivery of light through the glass. Because remember, in something like this lens here, you've probably got 17 lenses in there that are used to manipulate the light, and each one of those is going to flare light. So we need to be able to control it all the way through, such that we get about 93-95% of the light that gets all the way through the lens, and the coatings are the function of that.
19 elements, give or take a little.
Give or take, yeah.
Well, that gets me to my next and favorite question. What have you got that's new?
Lately, we've been putting some emphasis back into our photography lenses. And for us, one of the things that I want to tell your audience is, I'll call it a photography lens. A lens is a lens. It brings light to a sensor. So it can be for photography. It can be for making video. It can be for making feature films.
But wait, let me interrupt. Yep. My understanding is that if we have a vignette with a still lens, it kind of adds a nice look. But if we do a vignette with a cinema lens, we're going to have a problem. Do I need to worry about light edge to edge in cinema different than light edge to edge for still?
That's an excellent question. A vignette is a function of a lens that doesn't cover the sensor correctly. Mostly it's designed for smaller sensors. What Zeiss does, and made the decision a while ago, is to manufacture lenses that cover the larger of the sensors all the time so that we cover everything and then some. So you can use this on your Sony A7 full frame. You can use it on your Sony crop sensor. You can use it on your Red VistaVision. You can use it on all of that because we've designed the lens so that the circle of conformity is consistent and large enough to cover most of the lenses up through the cinematic large format lens sizes.
Okay, now you were in the mid talking of the new stuff.
Right.
What do we got?
So this is the Otis ML. Zeiss has decided to start to bring back some new photography lenses. And the first one we did is what everybody had asked for. The Otis is the granddaddy of the best lenses ever made for photography. But it's big. It was made for older style DSLR sensors and cameras. This is designed for modern mirrorless style cameras, so that it is the same high quality lens, but it will work and more exacting with the Sony E mount, the Canon RF for their mirrorless, and the Nikon Z mount for the Nikon Z cameras. It is smaller. It does one of the interesting things that the Otis does is it borrows from that cinematic feel. It has a lot more focus rotation. It has a wider aperture stop to f1.4. It also tends to have a little bit of a cinematic quality to it in the images that you capture. So it's not as analytical as you might have thought the old Otis to be. It's a much more crunchy, a much more a lens with character, shall we say. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I think a lot of people are going to find this is the one that they go to in their camera bag more often than not.
I know that different lenses have got different mounts. There's EF and there's Q and there's Y and who knows what all. Does the quality of the lens change based on the mount?
It doesn't. The mounts are controlled by the manufacturers, and everybody has one that they control and build a whole ecosystem around. The reality of the mount is that it properly aligns the back of the last lens element to the focal plane of the sensor or the film stock that you're using, and that distance is critical because if you think about when you had a magnifying glass as a kid, as you pull that away, that circle gets larger. You want to maintain that very specifically so that we can control what it looks like when the light is delivered to the sensor. So in a mirrorless, it's somewhere around 17 or 18 millimeters. In a DSLR, some of the older larger cameras with a mirror, it was more like 55, 56. And so that's really the function of the mount, is to make sure that we're at the correct distance for the lens and the sensor to work together.
So you've talked about the fact that you have new photography lenses, and you mentioned this one in specific. Were there other new announcements? I don't want to ignore anything.
We've most recently launched an upgrade to our Cinema Zoom lenses. We've had the CZ2s or the Cinema Zooms for some time, but they're older. They were much more mechanical, much less inclined to give you the metadata that you need these days for VFX or live production with VFX components. So we've upgraded those to provide for the lens data, information about the lens position out to the camera and to VFX tracking equipment. We've also added in what we call our Radiance Flare. So this is now a lens that purposely flares with a blue flare stack. We have it in some of our cinema lenses. Now we have it in our zooms as well.
For people that have not had the pleasure of working with Zeiss, what are some of the key benefits they should know?
3 of them in the Zeiss look. The sharpness, edge to edge, is unparalleled. There is what we call true color. And what I mean by that is there are lenses that will impart a color, either something a little more blue or a little more yellow. And that can be on purpose. It can also be some older lenses tend to age that way. Our lenses, because of the coatings we talked about, stay very true to color. It's very neutral. What you see is what you're going to get delivered to the sensor. And then lastly is the contrast nature of the lens. Our lenses tend to be very contrasty. It's kind of become what's called the Zeiss pop, and you'll find that it lends energy to the in-focus areas of your image. And that's something a lot of people will seek out, because when we're talking about HDR resolution and steps of contrast or black, it really lends into that and gives a lot of granularity and excitement to the images that you capture.
Tony, thank you very much.
My pleasure.